Chapter 1996. Take off your shirt, I'll take a look at your wound. Fengjiu gestured. Gu Xiangyi paused and looked at him hesitantly, saying, Ghost doctor, my wound is a bit scary. She was a woman after all, so he didn't want to scare her. Hearing this, Fengjiu couldn't help but laugh. Scary wound? It's fine, I haven't encountered a wound that can scare me. Family head Gu couldn't help but say, Ghost doctor is a doctor, what kind of wound haven't you seen? Come, I'll help you take off your shirt. He was worried that his right hand wouldn't be able to remove his clothes. No need, I'll do it myself. He refused his father's help and untied his belt to take off his outer shirt. However, while the outer shirt was easy to remove, the inner shirt wasn't so easy to remove. Moreover, he had only taken off a simple piece of clothing, but his forehead was already covered in sweat. Seeing this, Fengjiu said to Leng Shuang, help him take off his clothes and remove the cloth tied around him. Yes. Leng Shuang, who was waiting on the side, responded and took 2 steps forward to Gu Xiangyi's side to help him take off his clothes. Faced with the sudden approach of a woman, Gu Xiangyi instinctively took a step back. No need, I'll have my father help me. Seeing this, Fengjiu raised his eyebrows and looked at Gu Xiangyi with interest. Leng Shuang paused for a moment. She glanced at the man in front of her and then looked at her master. Family head Gu reacted and stepped forward, smiling as he said, Ghost doctor and Miss Leng, please excuse us. My son's personality is a bit strange, but he doesn't mean any harm. It's fine, just take off your clothes. Fengjiu rested his chin on one hand and looked at the father and son with a smile. Gu Xiangyi was a bit uncomfortable when he heard this. Why did it sound so strange? He glanced at the ghost doctor and saw that the other party had a smile on his face. His gaze carried a hint of playfulness as he stared at him, while the black-clothed woman called Leng Shuang had a cold expression on her face. She walked back to the side and stood silently. He couldn't help but find it strange that there was a young man behind the ghost doctor. Why didn't she ask that young man to help her take off his clothes and remove the cloth from his wound? Instead, she asked the woman in black. He really couldn't understand what kind of person the ghost doctor was. Her actions didn't seem like a normal person's. As his clothes were removed and the cloth on his wound, a rotten smell even stronger than before, which made Gu Xiangyi felt a bit embarrassed. Fengjiu, who smelled the odor, raised her eyebrows. She stared at the wound and stood up. The wound was between the right arm and the shoulder. The festering area was the size of a palm, and the shoulder bone was faintly visible. The situation was very serious. What surprised Fengjiu was that this person could still maintain a calm expression with such an injury on his body. This person was not simple. How did you get this wound? How did you get hurt? She asked, looking at Gu Xiangyi's resolute face and calm expression. Gu Xiangyi paused for a moment, then said, I encountered a volcanic eruption in the volcanic forest and was scalded by the lava spewing out. Chapter 1997. Gu Xiangyi's eyes flashed as she glanced at Fengjiu, asking, Ghost doctor, you don't know about the volcano forest? I don't know, I just came here not long ago. She shook her head and said. The volcano forest is the forest that most people go there to train. However, there is a large volcano in the depths that erupts every 3 months. Although it is dangerous when it erupts, precious materials will be ejected from the underground rock ores when the volcano erupts. Due to the special materials contained in the magma, it can even melt the ground, let alone human skin and flesh. My injury was only splashed by some small rock ores at that time, but after I used medicine, it didn't have any effect, causing the wound to worsen. Hearing this, Fengjiu nodded, then said to the two, the wound has already worsened to the bone. If it isn't treated as soon as possible, losing your hand is a small matter, but it is very likely that you will lose your life as well. She looked at Gu Xiangyi and said, if you hadn't been taking medicinal pills to suppress the internal fire in your body, the internal fire caused by the wound would be enough to cause the poisonous fire to attack your heart. Hearing this, the hearts of the father and son moved. It was indeed because she had been taking medicinal pills to suppress the poisonous fire. Because the wound was festering and inflamed, the poisonous fire couldn't come out and was forced into the body. If it wasn't for those medicinal pills, she wouldn't have been able to live until now. And as far as they knew, no one who had been scalded by the volcano's magma had survived. They had come here to give it a try. After all, a glimmer of hope was always a glimmer of life. "Please save me, Ghost Doctor," Patriarch Gu hurriedly said. Fengjiu smiled and said, "Patriarch Gu should know the rules here. I know, in addition to the medicine order, you also need the corresponding gold coins and 3 500-year-old spiritual herbs. I've already brought them," Patriarch Gu hurriedly said, taking out 3 500-year-old spiritual herbs from his space. Unexpectedly, Fengjiu looked at the 3 spiritual herbs and shook his head. "Although these 3 spiritual herbs are 500-year-old, they are not what I need, nor are they necessary to treat your son's injury, so these 3 spiritual herbs are of no use to me." Patriarch Gu's face paled when he heard this. He looked at Fengjiu, then at Gu Xiangyi, not knowing what to do for a moment. These spiritual herbs were from his family's collection. There were very few 500-year-old spiritual herbs, and they had been collected with great difficulty. Now, they weren't the spiritual herbs he needed, then. Gu Xiangyi heard this and frowned. He looked at Fengjiu and asked, "Ghost Doctor, are you sure you can treat my injury?" "Of course." Fengjiu nodded with a smile. "Doctor, what are your conditions?" "As long as I can do it, I won't." Patriarch Gu reacted when he heard his son's words. He looked at Fengjiu and said, "As long as the Ghost Doctor can save my son, our Gu family will not forget this great kindness. If you have any requests in the future, we will not refuse." Fengjiu shook his head and looked at Gu Xiangyi with a smile. "No need to be so serious, I just need you to do something for me." Hearing this, the father and son of the Gu family were slightly surprised and asked, "What is it?" Chapter 1998. Just like that? Patriarch Gu was in disbelief. Wasn't this the same as asking them to be the spiritual medicine supplier of the heavenly pill building? This was a cooperative relationship. Not to mention them, it was an extremely good thing for any family that was in the business of spiritual medicine. However, what surprised them even more was that it only took her half a day to find out that they were in the business of medicinal herbs. When they thought of the 3 500-year-old spiritual medicines that he had just taken out, they couldn't help but blush. Although those 3 500-year-old spiritual medicines were hard to come by and were part of their collection, for a medicinal family like the Gu clan, it wasn't difficult to obtain such aged spiritual medicines. All they needed was time. However, the other party didn't care about it and instead threw out such an opportunity for cooperation, which made him feel that he was a little narrow-minded. Fengjiu smiled and said, "The spiritual medicines that I want are the best. Not just any spiritual medicine can be given to me. Other than your Gu clan, I have another source of spiritual medicines. However, if you want to expand your business, you can't lack spiritual medicines." Gu Xiangyi, who was next to him, nodded when he heard this. "That's not a problem. In the future, I will personally check all the spiritual medicines that your heavenly pill building wants." "Very good." She nodded in satisfaction and said to him, "Come in with me." Then she turned and walked to another empty room. Gu Xiangyi followed her, but family head Gu wanted to follow her, but was stopped. "Family head Gu, just wait here." When they entered the room, Fengjiu gestured for him to lie down on the bed. He took out a small knife from his space to disinfect it and said, "The rotten flesh on your wound needs to be removed before I can apply medicine. Otherwise, it will be useless. The process of removing the rotten flesh will be a little painful, so bear with it." Gu Xiangyi responded and lay on the bed without moving until a sharp pain hit him. His body immediately tensed up, and the sweat on his forehead gradually seeped out and dripped down drop by drop. Leng Hua, who was next to him, stood still and watched his master, who was wearing a mask, remove the rotten flesh on the wound bit by bit and clean the wound. As time passed, the rotten flesh on the wound was removed, and a fist-sized hole appeared. His shoulder was oozing black because of the poisonous fire. His master took a sharp knife and scraped the black bone until the black poisonous fire was removed. Only then did he apply a light green transparent ointment to the wound. The cold feeling seeped into his bones and flesh, and Gu Xiangyi couldn't help but exhale softly. The cold feeling gradually eased the burning pain of the wound, and the numbness of the pain disappeared. What replaced it was a kind of heart-piercing coldness. Faintly, under this coldness, he felt that the fingers of his right hand, which had been numb before, were gradually regaining feeling. Fengjiu cleaned and disinfected the knife and put it away. He washed his hands, then took off his mask and stood up. The wound has been treated and the ointment has been applied. Here is the ointment, which has the effect of restoring muscle and relieving pain. When you go back, apply it once in the morning and once in the evening. It will take about half a month for the wound to recover. Thank you. He sat up and tilted his head slightly to look at the wound on his shoulder that was covered with ointment. Chapter 1999. When Gu Xiangyi walked out after bandaging her wound, she happened to hear her father ask the ghost doctor why she wanted to cooperate with them. Hearing this, his footsteps paused. Indeed, he didn't understand why she wanted to cooperate with them. Fengjiu smiled when he heard this and said, naturally, it's because she values your Gu family's integrity and credibility. Hearing this, Master Gu looked at her deeply. Thank you for thinking so highly of us, ghost doctor. Don't worry, my Gu family won't let you down. Fengjiu nodded slightly. Then let's find another time to talk about the cooperation. Okay. Master Gu looked at his son who walked out and saw that his face was paler than before. He stepped forward and came to his side. Xiangyi, how do you feel? I'm fine, father, Gu Xiangyi said and looked at Fengjiu. Ghost doctor, we'll visit again another day. Fengjiu smiled and then looked at Leng Hua. Send the two of them off for me. Master Gu, this way please. He made a gesture of invitation and led them out. Goodbye. The two said and turned to leave. Not long after, Leng Hua came back. Master, they've left. Fengjiu nodded and saw Luo Yu walk in. Master, there's news. What news? It's about the Han Rong that Master asked us to investigate. There's news about him, Luo Yu said. Seeing the smile on his master's face disappear, he said in a deep voice, he has indeed entered the devil path. Moreover, this subordinate has received news that he will soon go to the volcano forest to collect some natural volcanic material. If you want to take his life, this is a good opportunity. Since his master returned, he had secretly investigated Han Rong's news, and he only received this news today. Han Rong caused the Feng family to suffer so much. He believed that his master would never let him go after knowing this news. Volcano forest? Ha! She chuckled, but there was no trace of a smile in her eyes. She walked step by step in the courtyard. After a long while, she instructed, Leng Hua, when the time comes, you can talk to them about the cooperation with the Gu clan. You guys keep an eye on the Heavenly Pill building. At present, ordinary people won't provoke us. I'll make a trip to the fire forest. When the time comes, leave the fire phoenix behind to guard it. Hearing this, they couldn't help but look at each other. Luo Yu asked, Master, why don't you just let us go? We have also seen his portrait and recognized that Han Rong. If we go, wouldn't it be better for Master to stay here? If that Han Rong was easy to deal with, he wouldn't have survived until now. Fengjiu sneered, since he took over the body, he knew that the people from Yandian and I were looking for him. He rarely went out and stayed by the demon venerable's side. Now that this person has the opportunity, I naturally have to meet him personally. With Han Rong's cunning, I won't be at ease even if you guys go. I have to do this matter personally. It just so happens that I also want to see the natural material in the fire forest. If it's useful, I'll bring some back. She said slowly, glanced at them, and then smiled. If there's something you can't solve, you can also go to Mo Chen. I will ask him to help look after the Heavenly Pill building during this time. Chapter 2000. No need. It's more convenient for me to move on my own. Moreover, Mo Chen is like a moving luminous pearl. Wherever he goes, he'll be dazzling. If I let him follow me, wouldn't I be asking for trouble? She gently smiled. With Mo Chen's appearance and aura, how could it be easy to hide? But they still wanted to say something, but they were stopped. All right, I know what you're worried about. Don't worry. It's not like it's the first time I've been outside by myself. She waved her hand, indicating that they didn't need to say anything more. She then said to Luo Yu, organize the information for me. Give it to me later. Yes. Luo Yu replied, then turned and left. If someone comes to ask for pills or medicine while I'm gone, you guys deal with it. If you can't deal with it, then wait for me to come back. Fengjiu said to Du Fan and Leng Hua. Yes. The two of them replied. After giving her instructions, she went up to the pavilion and took out the transportation scroll from her space. Looking at it, she found the landmark of the Fire Mountain Forest and couldn't help but smile. This thing really is a treasure. It can be said that you can come and go as you please. She softly said. She couldn't help but feel her heart skip a beat. She wondered if there were any places outside of the sea on it. Thus, she carefully looked at it. She found that there were no landmarks outside of the sea on the transportation scroll. Instead, there were places like the Phoenix Dynasty. There's no place outside of the sea, but there's the Phoenix Dynasty. If that's the case, going back is easy. She softly muttered. She took the transportation scroll and looked at it, then finally put it away. She took care of some of the matters in the Heavenly Pill building and made some arrangements. When it was evening, Luo Yu brought the information he had prepared to her. She gave him some instructions then returned to the Feng Manor. She had someone send a message to the Nalan family the next day, telling him to come to the Feng Manor. The next morning, Mo Chen arrived at the Feng Manor. Under the guidance of Leng Hua, he arrived at the inner courtyard. Seeing the table in the courtyard with a few dishes and Fengjiu smiling at him, his eyes flashed and he walked forward with a smile. What day is it today? You're actually inviting me to the manor for a drink? Didn't I say I was going to treat you to a drink? These are all my treasures. Fengjiu smiled and poured him a glass of wine. At the same time, he joked, don't worry, my wine won't get you drunk after 3 glasses. You can drink it without worry. Hearing this, Mo Chen laughed. He lifted his robe and sat down at the table. Then, he said, you'd better be straightforward. If you don't make things clear to me first, I won't be able to drink to my heart's content. Fengjiu smiled and said, it's not a big deal. I'm just going out for a while, so I wanted to tell you to help me take care of the Heavenly Pill building. Oh? You're going out? Where are you going? He was a little surprised. Xianyuan Mo's had only left for a few days. Why was she going out? I'm going to the Fire Forest to deal with some matters. She raised her wine glass and took a sip. I'll leave in a few days. Are you planning to go alone? He frowned slightly. What is it that you can't let your subordinates handle? You have to go alone? If you're going alone, you should bring some people. If something happens to you while you're out alone, how will I explain it to that petty man? Chapter 2001. He's not here right now. Even if he was here, I wouldn't be afraid of him. Mo Chen smiled as he spoke. He also picked up his wine cup and took a sip. The wine was mellow in his mouth, and a mouthful of spiritual energy flowed through his body. It was very comfortable. Did you make this spirit wine yourself? He asked. You can say that. It's just some high-quality spirit wine that I made myself. How is it? The taste isn't bad, right? She played with the wine cup as she looked at the wine cup in his hand. It's not bad. The taste is very special. It's not inferior to the one I drank last time. Today, I've prepared 3 types of wine. Try them and see which one suits your taste. I'll give you 2 jars. She put down the wine cup and picked up her chopsticks to eat. Hearing this, Imo-chan smiled elegantly. You want me to help you look after the heavenly pill building, so you're giving me wine? That's a bit too much. In any case, we've known each other for a long time. That's because I want to see you. I'm not willing to give it to anyone else. As Fengjiu spoke, he smiled and narrowed his eyes. Today, these dishes were specially prepared by the kitchen. This wine was also specially prepared. Even if you're not busy, you should help me. Don't you think it's better if I go with you? He looked at her, and his handsome face was serious. The danger in the Fire Mountain Forest is something you can't estimate. If you go alone, I won't feel at ease. Fengjiu smiled. Compared to this, just help me look after the heavenly pill building. I don't have many friends here. The only one I can trust and have the ability to do this is you. Hearing her say this, Imo-chan helplessly smiled. It seems that you've made up your mind. No matter what I say, you won't change your mind. Since that's the case, I won't say anything more. You should be careful when you go to the Fire Mountain Forest. I know. Come, let's drink. She poured wine for him and said, after drinking this wine, try another type of wine. The taste is completely different from this one. In the courtyard, the two drank wine and ate while chatting. On this day, Imo-chan stayed in the Feng Manor until evening before preparing to leave. Alright, it's getting late. I'll head back first. Imo-chan rubbed his forehead and stood up. His body was slightly wobbly as he shook his head and said with a smile, You said this wine wouldn't get you drunk. You've been drinking from morning till now. It's already a miracle that you're not drunk yet. Fengjiu didn't move from his seat. He held his slightly red cheeks with one hand and smiled at the swaying figure. He shouted outside, Ling Shuang. Ling Shuang. Master. Ling Shuang walked in from outside the courtyard, glanced at the two people in the courtyard, then came to Fengjiu's side. Go and prepare a bowl of hangover soup for him. Fengjiu waved his hand as he spoke. His expression didn't look like he was drunk. It was just that his face was slightly red because he had drunk quite a bit of wine. Imo-chan, sit a bit longer. Let Ling Shuang bring you some hangover soup. You can't go back like this. She smiled and gestured for him to sit while saying, With your alcohol tolerance, let me tell you, in the future, don't compete with Zay in drinking. You're not his opponent. Chapter 2002. Ling Shuang, send him off. Have someone prepare a carriage to send him back. Fengjiu shouted to the outside. Only then did he stand up with the support of the table. He shook his head with a smile and walked back to his room. She returned to her room and washed her face before lying down on the bed. However, just as she was about to fall asleep, she heard the sound of footsteps on the roof. In an instant, she opened her eyes, and a cold light flashed through them. Which daring person dared to come to her home before the sky turned dark? She closed her eyes and calmly listened. From the sound of the footsteps, she could tell that there was only one person's footsteps. Did they come to scout the area? Her heart skipped a beat, and she ran through all the possible enemies in her mind. However, she felt that with the current reputation of the Heavenly Pill building, it was impossible for the various powers in Hundred River City to move against her. Then, it was possible that it was the group of people that had chased after Elder Tan. Ever since that day, there had been no news from those people. She had asked Luo Yu and the others to investigate, but in the end, they had only found a hidden force. Those people had not made any moves, so she thought that this matter should have come to an end. After about half a stick of incense, Ling Shuang's voice came from outside. Master. Come in. Hearing the voice coming from inside, Ling Shuang walked in. Arriving at the bedside, he quietly said, Master, the manor's hidden guards said that someone came to investigate our Feng Manor. However, the other party left after scouting the area. They did not act rashly and alert the enemy. She covered herself with the blankets and closed her eyes, not opening them, have them increase their vigilance over the next 2 days. As for what they discovered earlier, since the other party did not reveal themselves, pass down the order that they do not reveal themselves. Yes. Leng Shuang complied, then turned around and left. Fengjiu slept for a while. When night fell, 10 or so imperceptible footsteps passed over the Feng Manor's roof and quietly appeared in the Feng Manor's courtyard. Sure enough, there are no weak soldiers under a strong general. Did they already know that we would come? An evil voice rang out in the night. When this voice rang out, the surroundings were still quiet, and there was nothing out of the ordinary. However, it was precisely this excessive silence that was abnormal. The door slowly opened, and Fengjiu, dressed in red, slowly walked out. His gaze fell on the man who was protected in the middle of the courtyard. He calmly sized him up. Are you from the Black Kill Hall? The Black Kill Hall was the faction that was chasing after Elder Tan. This faction could be said to be an assassination faction and was considered to be one of the top in this area. When the man in the middle heard this, his sharp eyes flashed. He stared at Fengjiu with surprise in his eyes, as if he had found a prey. He, I didn't expect the ghost doctor to not only have excellent medical skills, but also have good investigative skills. You found out that we are from the Black Kill Hall in such a short time. Are you the hall master of the Black Kill Hall? She furrowed her brows slightly, somewhat displeased that the other party was staring at her as if she was his prey. Clearly, this person did not have this bit of awareness at all. On the contrary, he did not conceal his naked ambition at all. Chapter 2003. Fengjiu chuckled. His laughter was cold, and it did not reach his eyes. She leaned against the door, and her clear eyes swept across the dozen people in the courtyard. Finally, her gaze landed on the man who was leading them. Is that so? Unfortunately, I don't admire you, she said casually. She spoke absent-mindedly, as she crossed her arms and looked at the man. The words that came out of her mouth, however, were an order to the people of the Feng Manor: kill the intruder. These indifferent words were neither fast nor slow, neither light nor heavy as they spread across the night sky. The cold murderous aura in those words caused the people from Black Kill Hall to be startled. This woman dared to make an enemy out of the Black Kill Hall? Just as they were thinking about this, they suddenly saw over 20 figures appear in their surroundings. Most of these people were at the peak of the fairy realm. These people were none other than the team members that Fengjiu had brought along. They had originally left separately. However, some of them had returned to her side after leaving for a period of time, and they continued to work by her side. This was because, for these loose cultivators, as long as it was something that they recognized, anywhere could be their home, and anywhere could be their final destination. Thus, when Fengjiu gave the order, they instantly attacked the people in the courtyard. They had been trained to be tough and had outstanding fighting abilities. They knew where the weakest part of a person's body was, and when they attacked, they went straight for their opponent's fatal spot. Sharp sword energy filled the air with killing intent. The people from the Black Kill Hall were besieged by over 20 people, and they were besieged by over 20 fairy realm powerhouses. This caused the faces of the people from the Black Kill Hall to change slightly, and they quickly reacted. In response to Fengjiu's order to kill, the Black Kill Hall's master only curled up the corners of his mouth and laughed. His burning gaze was filled with determination as he stared at the enchanting woman in red in front of him. As expected, you're to my liking. I'll definitely take you. Ha! With just you? Fengjiu laughed coldly. His hand swept past his waist, and the Qingfeng sword appeared. A green light mixed with a sharp air current formed a cold sword energy that attacked the hall master. That's right, I'll do it. He narrowed his eyes and stared at her with interest. Originally, I was only here to take a look, but I've changed my mind. I'll kidnap you tonight. As he spoke, he gathered spirit energy in his hand and used it to block Fengjiu's sword qi. He dodged to the side and took a step forward, arriving at Fengjiu's side. Beauties are common, but such a charming beauty is rare. Ghost Doctor, don't you think so? He stretched out his finger to touch Fengjiu's chin. However, before he could touch Fengjiu's chin, he saw a green light flash past, and he felt a sharp pain in his arm. Yes. He grunted and quickly retreated a few steps. He tilted his head slightly and looked at the wound on his arm caused by the Qingfeng sword. His gaze swept over to Fengjiu. Fengjiu raised his chin slightly and met the hall master's gaze. His tone was cold and mocking. Why don't you take a mirror and look at your toad-like appearance? Even if you dare to speak, I don't dare to listen. The hall master's face stiffened when he heard this. He stared at her with a gloomy expression. You have a sharp tongue. Wait until you've fallen into my hands before we talk about it again. Chapter 2004. Hiss. He let out a muffled groan and sucked in a breath of cold air. His legs were instantly clamped together, and his face was flushed red as he quickly retreated. He pointed at Fengjiu in disbelief. You are not a woman. He gritted his teeth and pointed at her. The important part between his legs had been fiercely kicked, and it was so painful that his legs were trembling. He never thought that this peerless woman with an outstanding temperament would actually kick a man's most vulnerable part the moment she fought with him. Such a crude kick, yet it was used so cleanly and nimbly. That kick came too quickly, and he had no chance to avoid it. Hiss. He sucked in another breath of air and clamped his legs together. If it wasn't for the fact that he couldn't do such a vulgar action in front of so many people, he would have used both hands to check if his family jewels had been broken. Fengjiu sneered, and her gaze swept between his legs. With a smile that wasn't a smile, she said, "Don't forget that I am the ghost doctor. Do you think that my kick would be so casual?" Hearing this, his expression instantly changed, and his eyes narrowed as he looked at her. What do you mean? Damn it, that kick hurt so much. It's exactly what it means. Fengjiu looked at him playfully. Your thoughts are impure, and your eyes are filled with evil thoughts. I will break your evil root. I believe it will be very interesting for you. His heart jumped. He didn't know if it was the effect of her words, or if the original kick was as he said, but at this moment, he felt that the most vulnerable part between his legs was faintly numb. His heart couldn't help but sink, and he reached out to attack her. Then this sovereign will take you back. If I don't get it up, you will also have to suffer. In your dreams. Fengjiu turned the long sword in her hand, and sword chi shot out again. The green sword chi was like a sharp blade as it attacked the hall master. There were only a dozen or so people from the Black Kill Hall. They did not expect that other than the people from the Heavenly Dan building, there would be so many people guarding the place. They were caught off guard for a moment, especially when they saw that their master was gradually at a disadvantage in the fight with the ghost doctor. In addition, when they thought of the peak stage immortal expert who had been killed by the ghost doctor some time ago and saw the ruthlessness of these people tonight, the more they fought, the more frightened they became. All of them were injured, and the smell of blood also spread in the air. Bang! Fengjiu spun and kicked the Black Kill Hall master several meters away. He hit the wall and fell to the ground, spitting out a mouthful of blood. Pooh! He spat out a mouthful of blood and stood up with the help of the wall. Looking at the people coming out again, he gritted his teeth and stared at the dazzling woman in red. Fengjiu, just wait and see. Retreat. With a single order, the 10 or so people retreated in a sorry state. Fengjiu sheathed his Qingfeng sword and watched them leave with narrowed eyes. He did not pursue them. Ghost Doctor? How are you? Are you hurt? Hui Lang and Ning brought people quickly to Fengjiu's side and asked. I'm fine. Fengjiu shook his head, looked at them, and said with some surprise, Why are you here? Didn't I tell you to go to the Hall of Hell to deal with things? Chapter 2005. Hui Lang looked around and said, We came back after taking care of the matters at hand. Before Master left, he told us to bring some people over to the manor to protect the ghost doctor. We must ensure the ghost doctor's safety. We originally wanted to bring people over tomorrow, but we heard the commotion next door, so we came over. Hearing this, Fengjiu nodded. His gaze swept over the people they had brought over and said, "How about this? These people can be placed in the Ling residence. I also have people guarding the Feng Manor, so there's no need for too many. If there's any movement, we'll be able to hear through the wall." "That's fine." The two nodded. "You bring them back first. Come over to my place later. I have something to say to you." Fengjiu gave the order and returned to his room. The traces on the ground outside were quickly cleaned up by everyone. After Hui Lang and Ning Yi brought the people back to the Ling residence and settled them down, they came back and saw that the smell of blood had already dissipated. Fengjiu's courtyard was still lit. The two looked at each other and called out from the courtyard. "Ghost Doctor, we're here. Come in." Leng Shuang opened the door and gestured for the two to enter. Inside the room, Fengjiu sat at the table and drank tea. Seeing the two enter, he gestured for them to sit. The two of them didn't dare to sit down. They just stood there after looking at each other. Ing Yi didn't say anything and just stood there quietly with his eyes lowered. Grey Wolf smiled and asked, "Ghost Doctor, do you have any orders?" "In a few days, I will be going out. When the time comes, you and Leng Shuang will guard these two manors." "Wait." Before she could finish speaking, she heard Hui Lang cry out. "What? Ghost Doctor, you're going out? Where are you going? For how long? You don't plan on bringing us along? If Master finds out, we won't be able to handle the consequences." Ing Yi also looked up at Fengjiu and said, "Madam, Master has ordered us to protect you. If Madam wants to go out, you don't have to bring Hui Lang, but please bring this subordinate with you." Hearing this, Hui Lang glared at him and said angrily, "Why do I have to bring you instead of me? I don't think you're any better than me." Fengjiu's mouth twitched slightly. She glanced at the two of them and coughed softly. "I don't plan to bring anyone with me this time. Just guard this place for me." "How can that be?" Like Ing Yi said, "If you don't want to take him, at least take me with you." Hui Lang said hurriedly, patting his chest. "With me by the Ghost Doctor's side, it'll be safer no matter what." As soon as he said that, even Leng Shuang, who was at the side, glanced sideways at the Grey Wolf before silently looking away. "You're stronger than me?" Fengjiu looked calmly at Hui Lang and asked. Hui Lang's face stiffened and he said embarrassedly, "That's not true. But I can help you and run errands and scout the way. If we're talking about this, I have plenty of people around me." Fengjiu looked at him with a smile. But with me by the Ghost Doctor's side, you'll be safer. If anything happens, I can also cover for you." Hui Lang tried hard to find something that stood out about him, but no matter how he thought about it, he couldn't find anything that stood out. Chapter 2006. Fengjiu drank a cup of tea and slowly said, "I have already arranged this matter. I just wanted to tell you so that you won't panic when you can't find me. I have already taken care of the matters of the Heavenly Pill building. You just need to take care of the matters your master gave you and the safety of the Feng Manor and Ling Manor." Seeing that she had already decided, Ing Yi paused for a moment then asked, "Then where is Madam going? How long will this trip take? Will it be dangerous?" They could choose not to go, but they still needed to know. Otherwise, if their master asked about it in the future, wouldn't they not be able to say anything? "When I returned, I had people inquire about Han Rong. I recently found out that he will be going to Fire Mountain Forest. My main target this time is him." Fengjiu's voice was cold. She played with the teacup in her hand and slowly said, "As long as I take care of him, I will naturally return." Han Rong? Hearing this name, Hui Lang and Ing Yi frowned slightly. The two of them looked at each other without batting an eyelid. Of course, they were not unfamiliar with Han Rong. However, the Han Rong who had been possessed was very unfamiliar to them. Last time, the Ghost Doctor had said that she had received news of him outside, but because the location was not suitable, she did not appear to take his life. Later, she wanted to find him, but there was no news. Now that she had news of him, she naturally would not let it go. Speaking of which, it was because of Han Rong that the Phoenix dynasty was destroyed. It was also because of Han Rong that the Ghost Doctor's family experienced a life and death separation. Not only that, even when their master was being pressured by several countries and surrounded by experts, it was all because of Han Rong. This Han Rong was once someone by their master's side, but now, he was causing trouble again and again. Their master was not here right now. If he was here, he would definitely personally take care of this matter. Madam, Han Rong is a cunning person. It will not be easy to deal with him. Also, he recognizes you. If you are not careful and are discovered by him, Madam's safety. Ying Yi looked at her with a bit of worry. He was very clear that Han Rong wanted nothing more than to tear Madam apart. It is because he is not easy to deal with that I have decided to personally make a trip. This time, no matter who goes, I will not be at ease, Feng Zhou said slowly and said, this time, I will definitely not let him return alive. Her eyes turned cold. When she thought of that damned Han Rong, a fire burned in her heart. If it wasn't for him, that little Feng Ye wouldn't have died so miserably. Until now, he was still hiding it from his grandmother. Although her grandfather did not say anything, she knew that little Feng Ye's death was a huge blow to him. He was afraid that her grandmother would be worried, so he tried his best to hide the grief in his heart. After explaining some things to them, Feng Zhou said, the people tonight are from the Black Kill Hall. The Black Kill Hall master is injured and will not come again in a short period of time. However, you must be vigilant. When I leave, I will leave the Fire Phoenix behind to guard. In addition, I have also told Imo Chen to take care of this place and the Heavenly Pill House. If there is anything that cannot be solved, you can ask him for help. Yes, we understand. They nodded in response. After she finished instructing them on other matters, the two of them left. Back at the Ling residence, Hui Lang scratched his head and looked at Ying Yi. Are we really letting the Ghost Doctor go alone? She did not even bring the Fire Phoenix, can she do it? That Han Rong is not easy to deal with. Chapter 2007. All right. Hui Lang gently sighed, that's true. With the Ghost Doctor's strength, there should be very few people that can hurt her. Moreover, she is as cunning as a fox. Normally, whoever runs into her will suffer. As he said this, he saw Ying Yi look at him strangely. Hui Lang reacted and awkwardly smiled, I was just casually saying it. No matter how cunning the Ghost Doctor was, it was not something they could discuss. Fortunately, his master was not here. Otherwise, if he had heard it, he would have suffered again. Over the next few days, Feng Zhou spent most of her time in the Heavenly Pill building. Because she was about to leave, she refined some pills and medicines to avoid not being able to supply them when the time came. A few days later, she returned to the Feng Manor after taking care of the Heavenly Pill building's matters. When evening came, she changed into a new set of clothes and changed her appearance. She then headed towards the Western City Gate on her own. Of the 4 gates of Bai River City, the Western Gate led to a mountain path. Normally, there were few pedestrians. After leaving the city, she took out the Aurora transmission scroll. It should be able to restrain the light from the Aurora transmission scroll. She was familiar with using it the previous 2 times. Once she uses it, the light will be too dazzling. It's very likely that it will lead to a fatal disaster. She softly muttered as she held the Aurora transmission scroll and thought. This time, she was not in a rush to use it. Thus, before using it, she thought about it for a while. In the end, she opened the Aurora transmission scroll and whispered in her mind, Fire Mountain Forest. Just as she was about to use it, her body was wrapped in light and became transparent. With a whoosh, she disappeared. This time, she did not fly across the sky, nor did the dazzling light appear. When Feng Zhou landed on the ground, she did not fall from the sky like before. Instead, she appeared on the ground and spun around. Her body gradually stabilized. She looked at the pitch-black environment around her and could not help but reveal a smile. So this is the correct way to use the Aurora transmission scroll. It's much more convenient like this. She patted the green clothes on her body and tidied them up. Only then did she walk forward. This was the Fire Mountain Forest? It should be the periphery. After all, according to the information, the trees around the volcano forest were sparse and the temperature was relatively high. It was nighttime here, but through the moonlight above their heads, they could see that the trees were lush and green. When the night wind blew in the forest, they felt cool. It seemed that this should be the periphery of the volcano forest. It was convenient to travel alone. Her footsteps were light as she skimmed through the forest. Her green figure seemed to blend in with the greenery of the forest. In the night, if one did not observe carefully, it would be difficult to tell that the moving figure was a human figure. She tiptoed and walked until she saw the faint light of a fire in front of her. When she heard the sound of people talking, she couldn't help but slow down her pace. She took a deep breath and stood among the branches, looking at the group of people sitting in a circle in the forest. There were both men and women in the group. Some of them looked like mercenaries, while a few of them seemed to be the employers of the mercenaries. More than 20 people were sitting around two bonfires, talking to each other. Chapter 2008. Eldest senior brother, Master asked us to look for the Fires Park stone. However, my father said that it's extremely rare and will only appear when the volcano erupts. Although we have hired mercenaries to escort us, I still feel that this trip will be dangerous. I'm worried that we won't be able to leave once we enter, one of the women said softly with a worried expression. Among the few people, the older man said warmly, "Don't worry. Just treat this as an experience. It's not our first time going out for an experience, so don't think too much." Hearing that, another woman said, "But why didn't Master come with us to such a dangerous place? If there's any accident, then..." The few of them fell silent for a moment. Their master had ordered them to go down the mountain to look for a material called the Fires Park stone in the volcano forest. Other than giving them some self-defense items, there was no elder to lead them. It was because of this that they hired a group of mercenaries to travel with them after some discussion. The mercenaries smiled and said, "Everyone, don't worry too much. We're still in the periphery of the volcano forest. Even if there's any danger, it'll be after we enter the inner circle. However, if you feel that it's dangerous, you can come out after a trip to the inner circle. You don't have to wait for the volcano eruption that happens once every 3 months. Moreover, there might be some Fires Park stones in the inner circle. After all, no one can say that they've collected all the Fires Park stones every time the volcano erupts. Don't you think so?" Hearing the words from below, Fengjiu's eyes flickered and an idea formed in her mind. If she entered the forest alone, she would have to find the way. Moreover, if she really met Han Rong, she might as well mix in with the other groups. This way, even if he was on guard, he wouldn't think that she would join another group. With this thought, she started to think about the people below. The 6 young men and women looked like they were from a sect. If she wanted to mix in with them, it shouldn't be difficult. Her eyes flickered and her mind spun quickly. She was prepared to think of a way to travel with these people. However, what method should she use? A thought flashed through her mind, and a smile bloomed on her lips. She looked at the people below with an inexplicable smile. As the sky gradually brightened, those people gradually extinguished the fire and continued on their way. Behind them, Fengjiu followed unhurriedly, waiting for the right time. After following them for 2 days in the forest and entering the inner region, she finally got the opportunity she had been waiting for. "Oh. So your family has come out to experience. Since we are all going to the volcano, why don't we travel together?" Seeing that there were 30 to 40 people on the other side, and that there were elders leading the group who were stronger than them, they wanted to team up with them. At least the journey would be safer. Seeing that they were disciples of one of the 4 great sects, the Nebula Immortal sect, the clan member also had the intention to befriend them. That's good too. No matter what, it's relatively safer to travel together. Chapter 2009. Thus, the two groups of people sat together and rested. Some of them went to the nearby water source to get some water. A green figure naturally blended in with them. Is the water ready? I hunted a wild boar, let's go back and roast it. Fengjiu was dragging a wild boar that weighed about 100 jin as she spoke to the group of people who were filling the water. The group of people looked at the young man and saw that he had a simple and honest smile on his face. The young man didn't have a strong physique, but he was still dragging a wild boar. They stepped forward and said, "Come, let me help. We've already filled the water." "Brother, how did you hunt such a big wild boar?" "I can't accept big brother calling me brother. You can just call me Xiaojiu." She grinned and scratched her head with a simple and honest smile. "I was just lucky. This wild boar was already injured when it was caught. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to catch it so easily." "Xiaojiu? That's easy to remember," the man said with a smile as he picked up the wild boar that Fengjiu had placed on the ground. "Big brother? How should I address you?" she asked with a smile as she looked at the young man with a strong physique. "My surname is Chai, I'm a side branch disciple of the Chai family. I came out to train this time. You can just call me Big Brother Chai," the young man said as he turned to Fengjiu and said, "Let's go back. We're already in the inner area. Next time, don't go too far to hunt for wild animals. It'll be dangerous." Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled and narrowed her eyes. "Thank you Big Brother Chai for reminding me. I'll remember it." She followed beside him and laughed as they walked back. When the group of people who were resting saw that they had returned with a wild boar, they couldn't help but be surprised. The middle-aged man who was leading the group from the Chai family looked at the young man and asked, "Where did you get this wild boar?" Wild boars were very rare in this area. They hadn't seen a single one along the way. "I didn't hunt it. It was Xiaojiu." As the young man spoke, he patted Fengjiu's shoulder and said to the middle-aged man, "Second uncle, let's prepare the wild boar and roast it. You can rest for a while." The middle-aged man glanced at the honest-looking young man in green before revealing a smile. "All right, then you can go." He gestured to the young man and woman before him. However, at this moment, Fengjiu walked over and smiled at one of the men. "Brother Fan, can you come with me to pick up some branches?" The young man who was called was startled. He looked at the simple and honest youth in green and said, "Sure." He stood up and smiled at the others. Then, he walked with Fengjiu into the forest. "You're Xiaojiu?" Fan Yishio tilted his head and looked at Fengjiu. "Yes. Big brother Fan, just call me Xiaojiu." She smiled and squinted her eyes as she picked up some dry branches in the forest. When she saw that there were dry branches on the trees, she would jump up and break them off. As the two chatted, they picked up some branches and walked back. When they reached the resting area, Fengjiu took the branches from the young man's hands and said, "Brother Fan, you should rest first. I'll bring the meat to you when it's done." As she spoke, she carried the branches and walked to the area where the wild boar was being roasted. Fan Yishio was startled. Seeing the young man's friendly tone and manner of speaking, he was a little stunned. He felt that something was strange, but he couldn't put his finger on it. Chapter 2010. "Thank you." Fan Yishio took a sip and looked at the green-robed young man, who was busy roasting the meat. The second master of the Chai family, who was sitting opposite him, followed his gaze and looked at the green-robed young man. He smiled and said, "Xiaojiu's character is quite likable. He's honest and honest." "That's right." Fan Yishio smiled and nodded. After he looked away, he started to talk about the Fires Park stone with the second master of the Chai family. On the other side, Fengjiu was roasting the meat on behalf of the Chai family, and she quickly got along well with them. She called them big brother and sister, which made them very happy, so they took extra care of her. "The roasted meat is here. Come and try it. It's freshly roasted, and it tastes really good." Fengjiu brought them some roasted meat, then ran back to the roasted pig to help. For a moment, the forest was filled with the rich aroma of roasted meat, as well as the laughter of the crowd. After eating the roasted meat, the second master of the Chai family said, "It's time to go. We can't stay here for too long." "All right." Fan Ishio nodded and said something to the crowd. He then followed the Chai family's team into the forest. Fengjiu, who was in the team, was next to the young man. The two of them talked and laughed along the way. They weren't at the back of the team, nor were they at the front. Instead, they were walking in the middle. Suddenly, the team in front of them stopped. The second master of the Chai family made a gesture, and the crowd surrounded them vigilantly. At the same time, they put their hands on their weapons and were ready to attack at any time. Fan Ishio and the rest also looked around cautiously. They were protected by the mercenaries, but even so, they didn't dare to relax until they heard loud laughter. Ha 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 ha! Along with the laughter, many men wearing mercenary uniforms rushed out from the surrounding forest. All of them had abilities at the fairy realm, and their murderous auras and killing intent were very obvious. This caused the crowd to feel uneasy. The mercenaries who were protecting Fan Ishio and the rest recognized them. They couldn't help but gasp. It's the Scorpion mercenary group. Their faces were pale, and fear could be seen in their eyes. There wasn't a single mercenary who didn't know of the Scorpion mercenary group's ferocious reputation. These people specialized in plundering and didn't reject anyone who came. Most of the men were killed and their belongings were robbed. The fate of the women was even worse. Those with ordinary looks were killed after they played with them. If they encountered those with good looks, they would imprison those women and turn them into playthings after they played with them. Their methods were so ruthless that it made people tremble in fear. What Scorpion mercenary group? A few girls from the Nebula Immortal sect did not know the inside story and could not help but ask softly. However, the mercenaries who were protecting them pursed their lips. Their expressions were ugly and they couldn't say a word. Fan Ishio had heard of the Scorpion mercenary group before. When he saw the red scorpion tattoos on their faces, his heart sank. He lowered his voice and said to the people beside him, "Later, when the situation doesn't look good, you guys should leave first. Run out of the volcano forest and don't stay." The other two men from the sect saw that the mercenaries who were protecting them didn't look right. Even the older members of the Chai family didn't look right. Their hearts sank. Chapter 2011. The people from the Chai family looked at the people who had appeared. There were 50 to 60 people in the Scorpion mercenary group, and most of them were at the fairy realm. They were mercenaries who specialized in looting, and their methods were ferocious. Their combat power was shocking. If they fought, they would suffer heavy casualties. Most importantly, the Scorpion mercenary group was even more cruel to women. Many of the younger generations of the Chai family were accompanying them on this trip. If they fell into their hands, they would suffer a fate worse than death. He thought for a moment, then walked forward and cupped his hands. "Sir, we don't mean to offend you. If you let us leave safely, we are willing to leave some of our belongings behind." Hearing this, the people in the Scorpion mercenary group raised their heads and laughed out loud. "Leave some belongings behind? Ha 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 ha. Old thing, are you muddle-headed? We don't want all of your belongings and those delicate beauties, and we let you leave? Just for some of your belongings? Ha 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 ha. If that's the case, how can the Scorpion mercenary group survive in this volcanic forest?" Fengjiu, who was also protected in the middle, looked at the situation in front of her. She also saw that the second Master Chai was trying to make peace and seek a chance of survival. Her gaze shifted, and she quietly tugged at the young man beside her, who looked vigilant and worried. "Xiaojiu? Are you afraid?" Chai Feng glanced at the young man beside him and said in a low voice, "When the time comes, just watch. If you really can't defeat them, leave with your senior sisters first." Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled and tugged at him, indicating for him to lower his head. Chai Feng glanced ahead and saw that the second master was discussing with those people. He lowered his head and leaned closer to the young man. What's the matter? Tell me. Brother Chai, do you think we have a chance of winning if we fight? Fengjiu asked. Chai Feng shook his head solemnly. No chance. If we fight, I'm afraid we will suffer heavy casualties. The other party is a mercenary group with combat experience, and most of our people have just come out to train. If we really fight, I'm afraid. I have an idea. Are you willing to do as I say? She whispered. Seeing his doubtful gaze, she added, maybe, my method can save everyone's lives. Hearing this, Chai Feng's eyes lit up. There was determination in his eyes. Tell me. As long as I can save everyone, even if I have to sacrifice my life, I will not hesitate. Fengjiu smiled and whispered in his ear. He handed him another bag and looked at him quietly. Success or failure depends on you. Although Chai Feng had his doubts and did not know if this plan would work, he really did not have any other ideas at the moment. Moreover, he could tell that the other party would not let them off so easily. He nodded at Fengjiu, took a deep breath, and clenched the thing in his hand tightly. Right at this moment, the leader of the Scorpion mercenaries laughed arrogantly. Kill the man. Capture the woman and bring her back to reward our brothers. Yes. Ha 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 ha. The people behind the Scorpion mercenaries replied loudly. Looking at the beautiful women who were protected in the middle, they laughed excitedly, and their voices contained undisguised impatience. Chapter 2012. A voice filled with panic and fear suddenly rang out. A young man suddenly rushed out from the group. With a frightened look on his face, he waved his hands and jumped up and down as he screamed in shock. No, no. I don't want to die. I don't want to die. No, no. Ah. I want to go home, I want to go home. Woo, I don't want to go out to train, I don't want to go out to train. I want to go home, mother. I want to go home to mother. The sudden cry not only stunned the people from the Scorpion mercenary group, but also stunned the people who had turned pale when they heard that the Scorpion mercenary group was going to kill and kidnap the young man. The second master of the Chai family did not react for a long time when he saw the young man frightened to this extent. The women from the Chai family and the Nebula Immortal sect turned pale when they heard that they were going to kidnap them to reward the mercenaries. They almost lost their footing. When they saw that the young man was also frightened to this extent, they gritted their teeth and thought that if they could not escape in the end, they would commit suicide. Even if they died, it would be better than falling into the hands of those cruel people and being defiled by them. The people from the Scorpion mercenary group could not help but laugh when they saw the young man crying and screaming. He even took off his clothes and flung them around like a lunatic. Ha 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 ha. Big brother, look, we haven't even made a move yet, but this young man is already scared to death. It seems that our fame has spread far and wide. Ha 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 ha. A mercenary from the Scorpion mercenary group laughed complacently. He was not in a hurry to make a move. Instead, he held a saber on his shoulder with one hand and placed the other on his waist. He stood there with his feet splayed out and looked at the young man who was crying for his parents. Seeing that a young man was frightened to this extent by them, they felt a sense of accomplishment in their hearts. In the future, as long as they showed up, those people would be scared witless when they recognized them as members of the Scorpion mercenary group. When the second master of the Chai family saw that the young man from his family was so easily frightened, his face turned ashen as he shouted, Chai Feng. Come back. No. No. I don't want to die, I don't want to die. Chai Feng muttered and shouted as he ran in front of the group. When second master Chai saw this, his face turned pale. Bring him back. Two middle-aged men from the Chai family stepped forward and tried to grab Chai Feng. However, Chai Feng resisted fiercely. He kept running and jumping around. Don't catch me. I want to go home. I want to go home. Fengjiu, who was standing in the middle, looked at the scene in front of him with his mouth slightly agape. His face was filled with disbelief and shock. Who would have thought? This Chai Feng was really good at acting crazy. He really looked like he was scared out of his wits, which was out of her expectations. Chai Feng ran a circle around the crowd, but his body and clothes were leaning towards the scorpion mercenaries. After running a circle, he was dragged back by two middle-aged men from the Chai family. "Let me go, let me go." He struggled, but to no avail. Seeing this, the scorpion mercenaries coldly snorted and glanced at the women whose faces had turned pale. The leader's lips curled into a lecherous smile as he waved his hand. Attack. Chapter 2013. Whether it was the people from the Chai family, the people from the Nebula Immortal sect, or the accompanying mercenaries, they all attacked the people from the Scorpion mercenary group in an instant. At the same time, Fan Ishio from the Nebula Immortal sect shouted to the three junior sisters behind him, "Follow the people from the Chai family and leave first." Eldest senior brother. Although the three of them were experienced, they had never experienced such a situation where they would fight over a disagreement. At this time, the three of them were so frightened that they were at a loss. They could only retreat with the people from the Chai family. However, the people from the Scorpion mercenary group had surrounded them. Even if they wanted to escape, there was nowhere for them to go. Fengjiu also helped. She calculated the time. From the moment those people inhaled the medicine to the moment they activated the spiritual aura in their bodies, the medicine should have taken effect soon. Sure enough, just as the situation became more dangerous, some of the people from the Scorpion mercenary group staggered. Although they tried their best to hide their shock, their subtle expressions could not escape the eyes of Fengjiu, who had been observing them all this time. At this time, some of the people from the Chai family also felt uncomfortable after inhaling a small amount of medicine. Some of them staggered a few steps before they were supported by the people beside them. Some of them retreated to the side of a tree and leaned against it to catch their breath. Retreat. Suddenly, the leader of the Scorpion mercenary group shouted and ordered his mercenaries to retreat quickly. The members of the Scorpion mercenary group also retreated quickly after receiving the order because they also felt that something was wrong with their bodies. However, in front of the people opposite them, they forced themselves to endure and did not show it. The people on the other side were even more surprised. They did not know what the Scorpion mercenary group was up to. After taking a deep breath, Second Master Chai stared at the people from the Scorpion mercenary group. He could tell that something was wrong with them, but he was puzzled and did not know the reason. "Leave half of your belongings. We will let you live," the leader of the Scorpion mercenary group said in a gloomy voice. When he said this, the people from the Chai family and the people from the Nebula Immortal sect were all shocked. "What trick are you up to now?" Second Master Chai frowned. He did not believe that they would suddenly be so kind as to let them go. "Humph. It's just that we don't want to kill today. We want to let you live." "Why? Do you not want to live anymore?" the leader of the Scorpion mercenaries said in a gloomy voice. However, if one listened carefully, one could still hear the unwillingness and killing intent in his voice. "Second uncle, you can't listen to them. They're drugged. Kill them." At this moment, Chai Feng, who was being held at the back, shouted loudly. He struggled and said to the two people beside him, "Let me go. I didn't go crazy from fear. I just drugged them." Hearing this, the people from the Chai family were shocked. Before they could react, they heard the people from the Scorpion mercenaries roaring angrily. "Damned bastard! How dare you play dirty tricks on us?" Their curses were filled with undisguised anger and killing intent. Just now, they had been suspicious, but now that they heard this brat say it, it made them even angrier. It turned out that the reason why they were gradually losing their spiritual power was because of this brat's dirty tricks. Chapter 2014. He felt that their fighting strength was becoming weaker as they progressed. He also noticed that some of their footsteps were faltering. So, it was because they were drugged? Yes, I drugged them just now. They inhaled a colorless and odorless drug, so their fighting strength has been drained. Second uncle, let's kill them now and get rid of a big threat. Otherwise, we'll definitely die if they recover. As he spoke, Chai Feng had already struggled to free himself and rushed forward with his long sword. He was not drugged, and his skills were not bad. At this moment, he killed one of the members of the Scorpion mercenary group at a speed that left no time for anyone to cover their ears. Hiss! A blood-curdling scream suddenly rang out. The blood that splashed out and the sharp and mournful scream instantly brought everyone back to their senses. Seeing this scene, the Chai family's second master was excited and immediately shouted, "Kill them! Get rid of a threat in the volcano forest." As soon as he finished speaking, he took the lead and rushed forward, waving his sword and slashing at the pale-faced Scorpion mercenaries. Just a moment ago, they were all excited and ready to harvest the other party's lives. Now, the tables had turned. The reversal of the situation at the critical moment of life and death made everyone excited and exhilarated. At this moment, they had no fear, only murderous intent. They only wanted to kill the Scorpion mercenaries in front of them. Only by killing them would they be able to survive safely. Feng Zhou's lips curved slightly as he watched this scene. A faint light flashed in his eyes as he watched the massacre in front of him. The sound of swords clashing, the sound of blood splashing, and the mournful screams and exclamations mixed together in the forest. In front of her and around her, only the shadows of swords and sabers could be seen flashing past. The Chai family in the Nebula Immortal sect, who had reversed the situation, were in control of life and death. They harvested the lives of the Scorpion mercenaries, killing them one by one until no one was left alive. When the members of the Scorpion mercenary group were killed one by one on the spot, and when they saw the ground covered in blood and corpses, the people who were standing with their swords and sabers pointed at the ground dripping with blood finally came back to their senses in a daze. They're all dead. Yes, the Scorpion mercenaries are all dead. The Scorpion mercenaries are all dead. We actually killed them. We actually killed them. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. We're actually still alive. One by one, the people standing with swords and sabers in their hands murmured. A moment ago, they were facing death, but in the next moment, the situation was reversed, and all of this. Suddenly, everyone's eyes fell on Chai Feng. Chai Feng, who was standing in a daze, looked at the green figure with disbelief, shock, and astonishment in his eyes. He didn't expect it to succeed. He did not expect that the situation would turn around just as he had said. He also did not expect that they would still be alive in the end, while the ones who died were the people from the Scorpion mercenaries. At this moment, no one knew how much shock and astonishment he had in his heart. Just one plan, just one pack of medicine, and it was actually able to wipe out this brutal mercenary group that was tyrannical in this fire forest. Chapter 2015. Ah, Feng, come over here. What's going on? Tell us. Second Master Chai came back to his senses and suppressed the shock in his heart as he shouted at Chai Feng, who was standing there in a daze. At this moment, even Fan Yishio and the others were looking at this ordinary-looking young man. He was actually the one who had turned the situation around and saved everyone's lives. Ah, Feng, you scared me to death. I thought you were really scared out of your wits. I didn't expect that this was just your plan. How did you come up with this idea? How did you get your hands on such a powerful medicine? Those people were all cultivators at the fairy realm, but none of them were able to resist at all. Brother Ah Feng, you're too amazing. Brother Ah Feng, we're lucky to have you. Otherwise, we would have been in deep trouble. Surprised and excited voices rang out and finally pulled Chai Feng back to his senses. He glanced at Feng Zhou, then retracted his gaze and came to his second uncle's side. Second uncle, I didn't come up with this idea, and the medicine wasn't mine. The one who saved everyone wasn't me, but Xiao Zhou. Chai Feng pointed at the young man who was wiping his dagger. It was Xiaojiu who came up with this idea. It was Xiaojiu who gave me that bag of medicine. If it wasn't for him, I don't think we would have survived. It was Xiaojiu? Everyone looked at the calm and honest young man in shock. This young man was so ordinary looking, so how could he, seeing that everyone was looking at him? Fengjiu, who was wiping his dagger, flashed a simple and honest smile at the crowd. He then lowered his head and continued wiping his dagger. Yes, it was Xiaojiu. He gave us the medicine, and he came up with the idea, Chai Feng emphasized again. Chai Feng emphasized again. He looked at his second uncle and said, Little Nine said that he will help everyone get through this crisis, but the things on those mercenaries will belong to him. Hearing this, everyone was stunned again, and their gazes fell on the young man in green. All the things would belong to him? Then they wouldn't have anything? However, thinking deeper, if it wasn't for his idea and the medicine he took out, they might have lost their lives by now, let alone their belongings. Thinking about it carefully, it wasn't too much for him to make such a request. At least, he only asked for the belongings of the Scorpion mercenaries, not their belongings. Their lives had been saved by him. Even if they knew that the Scorpion mercenaries had a lot of belongings, they wouldn't be greedy. After all, he was so young, but so cunning and had such a powerful medicine. Second Master Chai nodded, I think so too. As he said that, he ordered a few people to collect the space rings and Qinkuan pouches from the Scorpion mercenaries. They were stacked into 2 small piles along with the weapons in their hands. Xiaojiu, thank you for saving us with your plan. You deserve all of this, Second Master Chai said as he gestured for him to collect all the belongings. Chapter 2016. She took the spatial rings and universal bags, as well as the jade ornaments on the waists of the Scorpion mercenaries. As for the weapons, she said to the family's master, I have no use for these weapons, so you can keep them for yourselves. Perhaps they will come in handy in the future. How can you do that? These are all your. Before the second Master Chai could finish his words, he was interrupted by Fengjiu. I have no use for them, as I can't use so many of them. She smiled and looked at Chai Feng. She then took out a spatial ring from her space and handed it to him. Brother Chai, this is for you. No, how can I take them? It's already not easy for us to survive, so you should keep them. I can't take them. Chai Feng waved his hand and stepped back. He didn't want to take them. Even though Fengjiu repeatedly asked him to take them, he still insisted on not taking them. In the end, Fengjiu had no choice but to take them. Fine. If you don't want them, I will keep them for myself. When we return to the city, I will sell them for money. She smiled as she spoke. The second Master Chai ordered everyone to take one of the weapons and keep it with them. As he looked at the corpses and the blood on the ground, he said, We can't stay here for long. We must leave immediately and find a clean place to rest. Okay. Thus, everyone quickly left. After they left the bloody area, they found a place without the smell of blood and sat down to rest. Xiaojiu, do you still have that medicine? The second Master Chai asked. He wondered what kind of medicine it was. If it could poison even a fairy realm expert, then it couldn't have been refined by an ordinary person. No, she said as she spread out her hands. Then, where did you get that medicine? The second Master Chai asked again. He thought that if he knew where she had bought it, he could go there and buy some to protect himself. 100 Rivers City's Heavenly Elixir Building, Fengjiu said with a smile. 100 Rivers City's Heavenly Elixir Building? Second Master Chai looked at him in surprise. He then looked at the other members of the Chai family and said to Fengjiu, We have never heard of the Heavenly Elixir Building. Fan Yishuo and the others who were sitting at the side did not say anything. They were deep in thought. Among them, Fan Yishuo was the strangest. He looked at Fengjiu and asked, Is it 100 Rivers City? I didn't say that there was a Heavenly Dan building in the 100 Rivers City. A female disciple replied, Eldest senior brother's home is in 100 River City. Fengjiu's eyes flashed. Fan Yixio's home was in Hundred River City? There didn't seem to be many people with the surname Fan in Hundred River City. A figure flashed through his mind, but it was gone in a flash. This heavenly elixir building is newly opened. It specializes in selling elixirs, medicines, medicinal powders and other commonly used things. These things are just like the medicine I took out today. They are good and top grade. However, they are also very expensive. Moreover, some things can't be bought with money. Oh. Money can't buy it? Then, how can it be bought? Someone asked as he looked at Fengjiu in surprise. Medicinal ingredients. Moreover, they have aged medicinal ingredients. They buy at least 500 years old spiritual ingredients. This news has already spread in the heavenly elixir building. Many people have asked for them because of their reputation. I only managed to get this medicine by chance. Chapter 2017. After a moment of silence, Chai Feng asked the question that he wanted to ask the most along the way. Second uncle, are we going to enter the volcano forest again? Ever since he encountered the scorpion mercenaries and almost lost his life, he had been thinking about this problem along the way. They had gone to other places to gain experience before, but this time, there were also some disciples who didn't have much experience following them. Among them, there were a few women from the clan. If Little Nine hadn't thought of a way to reverse the situation and save everyone's lives, he was afraid that none of them would have survived. Moreover, he felt that compared to the people inside, their strength was still too weak. Even if the person leading them was the most talented second master of the Chai family, who was a cultivator at the beginner immortal realm, it was impossible for him to protect so many of them. In his heart, he vaguely hoped that he could return home or find a new place to train. It did not have to be the Fire Mountain Forest. When Second Master Chai heard Chai Feng's words, he was stunned and looked at him with a slightly twisted gaze. We're already here. Are we still going back? Cultivation is against the heavens, so there will naturally be many obstacles on our way of cultivation. Some of them may even lead to death. Can we retreat just because there are dangers ahead? If we retreat, I'm afraid we won't be able to improve our strength for the rest of our lives. But we've only just reached the outskirts of the inner area. I'm worried that if we continue to walk in, all of us might really die here. Upon hearing this, Second Master Chai immediately reprimanded him. Nonsense. The scorpion mercenaries are gone now, so there won't be many people left in the forest. If you're afraid of danger, you can just raise your guard. What's there to worry about? Chai Feng lowered his head and did not say anything else. He knew that they would not listen to his suggestion even if he made it. Everyone rested in the forest until the sky gradually darkened. Today's battle had exhausted them. Now that they were relaxed, they felt weak all over. Compared to the people sitting around the fire under the tree, Fengjiu leaned against the tree and slept. She took advantage of the night's rest to explore the things in the interspatial rings and Qinkuan bags with her divine sense. She found one of the fire's park stones. However, there were people guarding the surrounding trees, so she could not enter the space. She could only use her divine sense to scan the area and remember the characteristics of the fire's park stones. The next morning, after a good night's rest, everyone woke up in high spirits. They stretched their bodies one by one and got ready to continue walking into the depths of the forest after organizing themselves. The rest of the journey was rather peaceful. Occasionally, small beasts would appear, but they would be repelled by them. The peaceful training made them gradually forget about the dangers from before. Until one morning, when they were walking towards the depths of the forest, they heard voices coming from the forest ahead. I'll go and take a look first, Fan Yixio said. He gave some instructions to the people behind him and went ahead to explore the path. It was only because the Chai family's people had been scouting the way that they had followed. Now that they had heard the sound, they naturally had to check it out. Chapter 2018. There were more than 20 men lying on the ground in front of him. They were all injured and the smell of blood filled the air. However, although they were injured, they were not fatal. What made him astonished was that the people on the ground were all dealt with by a man in his 20s or 30s. On the side, a grey-robed old man was sitting on top of two men who were stacked together. He seemed to be impatient as he urged, but it took so long to deal with more than 20 people. Why don't you just kill them all with a single slash? Clean and tidy. Martial Granduncle. Fan Isho shouted excitedly after he recovered from his shock. Han Yuan, who was sitting with his legs crossed, was shocked by this martial granduncle. He couldn't help but jump up and look at Fan Isho, who was walking over quickly. He looked at him from head to toe and said, "Who are you?" "What martial granduncle?" "Don't call me that." Martial granduncle, disciple Fan Isho is a disciple of the Nebula Immortal sect. I was lucky enough to see martial granduncle from afar in the sect, so I can recognize you. Fan Isho was excited. He didn't meet anyone from the Nebula Immortal sect along the way, but he didn't expect to meet the elusive martial granduncle Han Yuan here. Martial granduncle, this is disciple's identity token. Fan Isho quickly took out his identity token and handed it over. With one hand tugging on his beard, Han Yuan Zi slightly raised his eyelids and glanced at him. Seeing that he was wearing the robes of the Nebula Immortal sect, and that outer robe was a defensive mystic artifact, Han Yuan Zi took his identity jade tablet and scanned it with his divine sense. Only then did he ask. "So you're a disciple of the Jade Forest Mountain?" "Yes, disciple is from the Jade Forest Mountain." Fan Isho quickly said. "Since you're a disciple of the Jade Forest Mountain, why are you here?" Han Yuan glanced at him and snorted. "You dare to enter the Fire Mountain Forest with such strength? Do you want to die?" Fan Isho lowered his head and said respectfully, "Disciple and my juniors are under Master's orders to enter the Fire Mountain Forest to find Firespark stones." Hearing this, Han Yuan frowned. "Your master asked you to enter the Fire Mountain Forest to find Firespark stones? Other than you, how many disciples of the Nebula Immortal sect are there? Why are you alone?" "Martial granduncle, other than disciple, there are 2 juniors and 3 juniors. Master knows that our strength is limited, so before we go, he gave us a defensive artifact, which is the fire armor. The other juniors are resting not far behind." Fan Isho pointed. Hearing this, Han Yuan Zi's divine sense swept over, and saw a large group of people resting in the forest 100 meters away. Among them, there were indeed a few young disciples wearing the clothes of the Nebula Immortal sect. He retracted his gaze and asked, "Who are those people?" Chapter 2019. If it was an enemy, Fan Isho should have given her a hint. However, there was no movement in front of them. Did that mean they knew each other? She could use her divine consciousness to investigate, but since she could sense the strength of the divine consciousness, she naturally would not use her divine consciousness to investigate. Otherwise, it would easily arouse the other party's suspicion and attention. As for who it was, she believed she would find out soon. Han Yuan nodded and said, "You guys are lucky. We haven't met the Scorpion mercenary group for quite some time, but you guys got surrounded as soon as you entered the inner area." Fan Isho nodded and said, "You guys are lucky. We haven't met the Scorpion mercenary group for quite some time, but you guys got surrounded as soon as you entered the inner area. TSK, TSK. Speaking of which, your luck is really heaven-defying. Not a single one of you died after encountering the Scorpion mercenaries. You're only injured, yet you're still alive and well. It seems that this person really has some luck." As he spoke, he looked at Zhuo Junyue and said, "Look at his luck, and then look at yours." TSK, TSK. Zhuo Junyue glanced at the old man expressionlessly and looked away indifferently, too lazy to talk to him. Speaking of which, it's fortunate that Xiao Jiu was here. Otherwise, it would have been difficult for us to avoid this disaster. As Fan Isho spoke, he looked at the old man in front of him and said, "Martial granduncle, are you also looking for the Firespark stone? Would it be possible for you to travel with us?" Speaking of this, he lowered his head in shame. After entering here, this disciple realized that it was difficult for me to even protect myself with my own strength. Now that I have a few junior brothers and sisters with me, I can't return with the fire's park stone and report back. If I enter again, I'm worried that I'll lose my life here, so. Hunyuan stroked his beard but did not agree. Instead, he looked at the man standing quietly beside him and asked, Junhua, what do you think? As you wish. His words were concise and did not say much. Hunyuan thought for a moment before nodding. That's fine. Anyway, there are only two of us. Especially since this guy is a blockhead who doesn't speak much. It's quite boring to be with him. Hearing this, Fan Ishio joyfully expressed his thanks. Many thanks to Grand Marshal Uncle, many thanks to this. He suddenly remembered that Grand Marshal Uncle didn't mention who this young master was. His surname is Zhua. His name is Zhua Junhua. Primordial Chaos said without further introduction. Thank you, young Master Zhua. He hurriedly bowed and looked at the people on the ground. Don't worry about the people on the ground. Even if they don't die, they won't amount to anything. Let's go. Hunyuan waved his hand and let him lead the way. At this moment, the people from Chai family and Nebula sect saw that Fan Ishio hadn't returned after such a long time. They couldn't help but worry. Why haven't you come back yet? Could something have happened to him? Why don't I go take a look? There's no need. Look, he's back. But who are those two? One of them said as he looked at the old man and the man who followed behind. Fengjiu, who was drinking water under the tree, couldn't help but choke when he saw the old man and the young man walking over. Cough cough. She patted her chest and quickly went behind the tree. After catching her breath, she picked up the water bag and put it into the space. Then, she quietly poked her head out from behind the tree to look at the two people. Chapter 2020. She touched her face. Although it was a disguise, the last time she saw the old man, she seemed to be wearing this face. Moreover, she was certain that even if she smeared something on her face to prevent him from seeing her face, the old man would still recognize her. After all, her profound spirit body couldn't escape his eyes. Escape? Where could she escape to? It wasn't easy for her to sneak into this group and make a name for herself. She couldn't bear to leave now. However, if she didn't escape, the old man wouldn't let her go so easily. Her mind raced for a moment. At this moment, she faintly heard a voice in front of her. Second Master Chai, this is our martial granduncle, Hunyuan, and this is young Master Zhua. Fan Ishio introduced them. When the Chai clan members heard that it was Hunyuan from the Nebula Immortal sect, their eyes lit up with excitement. It's Hunyuan, Immortal Monarch. My apologies for not recognizing you. I am Fengjiu listened to the second master of the Chai family's introduction excitedly. He asked the younger generation of the Chai family to come forward to greet him and say a lot of words of admiration. In the end, she was interrupted by the old man. All right. I heard that there's a young man called Xiaojiu here. Who is he? Hunyuan glanced around and didn't see any particularly outstanding young man. Oh, it's Xiaojiu. Xiaojiu was resting under this tree just now. Second Master Chai smiled and pointed at the tree not far behind him. However, the young man's figure was nowhere to be seen. He couldn't help but be startled. He walked forward to take a look and couldn't help laughing. He said to Hunyuan, Xiaojiu must be tired and fell asleep leaning against the tree. Oh. Is that so? Hunyuan poked his head forward and glanced at the corner of a cyan robe. He became even more curious. So this was the young man who saved everyone here? He walked forward step by step. When he arrived behind the tree to take a look, his eyes couldn't help but widen. His hands trembled as he pointed at the sleeping green-clothed youth. You. It's you little bastard. The expressionless Zhua Junyue's eyes flashed when he saw this. He glanced at Master Hunyuan and walked up to the tree. He couldn't help but be startled. This young man was handsome and beautiful. He wasn't very dazzling, but his facial features were well coordinated. Moreover, the more he looked at him, the more familiar he felt. When he thought about how Hunyuan had called this young man a little bastard, he seemed to have thought of something and his expression became strange. Fan Ishio and company also came over. Second Master Chai looked at Primordial Chaos and asked in puzzlement, Immortal Lord, do you know Xiaojiu? After saying this, he felt that it was inappropriate to ask this question. This Xiaojiu was originally with Fan Ishio and the others. Since they were all from the Nebula Immortal sect, they should know each other. However, after thinking about it, he felt that something was amiss. This Primordial Chaos had always been elusive and had an extraordinary status in the Nebula Immortal sect. How could he know a small disciple? However, from the looks of it, it seemed like he had really interacted with Xiaojiu before. Interacted? When he thought of this, he couldn't help but shake his head and smile. One was the sect's Mount Tai, and the other was a small disciple of the sect. How could these two have interacted? Does Martial Granduncle know Xiaojiu? Chapter 2021. Humph. This little bastard, I can recognize him even if he turns into ashes. The old man said angrily. He stepped forward and shouted, Little bastard, stop sleeping. I know you're pretending. Get up now. Fengjiu rubbed her eyes and opened them blankly. When she saw the crowd surrounding her, she was shocked. She patted her chest and said, Why are you all surrounding me? I just took a short nap. Did something happen? Don't pretend, kid. How dare you say you don't recognize this old man? Hunyuan suddenly leaned his face in front of Fengjiu and glared at her. Fengjiu blinked and shook her head. Old man, I don't know you. Then, she asked carefully, Have we met before? Originally, when Hunyuan saw him shake his head, he thought that this kid was quite sensible and didn't dare to pretend not to know him. However, when he heard what he said, he was so angry that he snorted heavily. He glared at him and pointed at him. You little bastard. You heartless little bastard. How dare you say you don't recognize me? You say that again. I dare you to say it again. Looking at the old man who wanted to sit on the ground and act shamelessly, Fengjiu secretly curled her lips and said good-naturedly, I really don't know you. I've never seen you before. Then, she thought for a moment and said, Could it be that you've seen me and forgotten me? I don't think so. I don't have any impression of you. You're still talking. You're still talking. You. I knew it, I knew you wouldn't admit it so easily, you little bastard. The more he spoke, the more aggrieved he felt. He crossed his arms and sat down in front of Fengjiu like an old urchin. He stared at Fengjiu with reddened eyes. Seeing the dignified grandmaster of a generation, Tai Shan of the Nebula Immortal sect, childishly sitting on the ground in front of the youth with his arms crossed in front of his chest, staring at him with grievance and anger, everyone was at a loss. What the hell is going on here? Second Master Chai pulled Fan Ishio aside and asked, Is this really Senior Hunyuan? Are you sure? Fan Ishio was also a bit embarrassed. He said, It can't be wrong. Martial Granduncle has always been carefree. His character is. For a moment, Fan Ishio couldn't find any other words to say. He only said, It's like this. Second Master Chai, please don't take offense. No. But what's going on between him and Xiaojiu? Why is it that one person says he knows him, while the other says he doesn't? Fan Ishio shook his head and sighed. I don't know either. Even the second master of the Chai family did not know what was going on between Xiaojiu and Grand Martial Uncle. How would he know if the two of them had met before? Fengjiu, who was leaning against the tree, saw the old man glaring at her and sitting in front of her. She couldn't help but ask embarrassedly, Old man? What are you doing? Humph. You little bastard, don't you know what I'm trying to do? Han Yuan snorted. He was going to waste his time with him. This time, he couldn't let him escape. Fengjiu rubbed her head and smiled foolishly. I really don't know. She didn't believe that he could force her to admit it. Chapter 2022. Zhuo Junue glanced at Han Yuanzi, then at the young man. Didn't he say he doesn't know you? You brat, I asked if you were that little bastard. Han Yuanzi glared at him. Zhuo Junue didn't say anything else. He just pursed his lips and looked away. Fan Yishio stepped forward at Second Master Chai's signal. Martial Granduncle, no matter what, we're all here. We still have a long way to go. What he meant was that even if they did know each other, it didn't matter if Xiao Jiu didn't admit it. They could still get to know each other after a long time. Humph. Han Yuanzi snorted and didn't say anything else. He just stared at Fengjiu, who was smiling. Brat, didn't you say you don't know me? Fine, I'll say it again. I'm Han Yuanzi from the Nebula Immortal Sect. Oh, Senior Han Yuanzi. She stood up and bowed to him. She thought to herself, what Han Yuanzi? He's just an old bastard. She smiled and was about to leave when Han Yuanzi stared at her and asked, Brat, what are you doing? She was stunned and said blankly, I didn't do anything. I'm thinking that since we've rested here for a while, should we continue moving forward? Everyone was stunned and looked at Second Master Chai and Han Yuanzi. Han Yuanzi pulled at his beard and didn't say anything. Second Master Chai smiled and stepped forward. Han Yuanzi, Immortal Lord, what do you think? Let's go. The monk can run, but the temple can't. I don't think this brat dares to run. He put one hand behind his back and stroked his beard with the other. Then, he stepped forward. Second Master Chai thought to himself, this young man is from the Nebula Immortal Sect. Isn't it easy for you to find him? Even if he did run away, the sect would be able to find his family. Naturally, the monk can run, but the temple can't. On the other hand, Han Yuanzi was thinking that since this little bastard was a member of the Chai family, then even if he ran away again, he would still be able to find the Chai family. He didn't believe that this little bastard would dare to run away under his nose this time. Both of them thought that the young man was one of the other party's men, but they didn't know that he had snuck in to give them the wrong impression. The group of people walked forward. Second Master Chai, Han Yuanzi, and Zhuo Junue walked in the front. Fengjiu walked in the middle with Chai Feng. Xiao Jiu, why did the Han Yuan Immortal Monarch say that he knew you? Have you forgotten where you saw me before? Chai Feng couldn't help but be curious and asked in a low voice. This was because he saw Han Yuan turning his head to stare at Xiao Jiu from time to time. The look in his eyes didn't seem like he didn't know Xiao Jiu at all. Fengjiu sighed softly and said, I don't know. Maybe we've met before, but I forgot. She spread out her hands helplessly. It's okay if you forgot. Don't worry too much. I don't think he has any ill intentions towards you. Chai Feng comforted her. Yes, I know. Of course, she knew that the old man didn't have any ill intentions towards her. He only wanted her to be his disciple, but she refused and even swindled him out of a treasure like the Aurora teleportation scroll. However, it wasn't exactly swindling. It was something she deserved after she cured Zhuo Junue's poison. Chapter 2023. He saw that the young man was talking to the person beside him, smiling from time to time. As if sensing his gaze, the young man looked at him with a smile in his eyes. When he met the young man's gaze, his heart skipped a beat. He slowed down his pace and let the person beside him go first. He walked in the middle and came to the young man's side. Seeing that this man had something to say to little Nine, Chai Feng, who was at the side, consciously moved back a little, giving them some space. What's the matter? Fengjiu looked at the man walking beside him and asked. I owe you a word of thanks. Zhuo Junhua tilted his head slightly to look at the young man beside him. He saw that the young man only reached his neck and had to lower his head to look at him. Thank you for saving me last time. Hearing this, Fengjiu smiled and narrowed his eyes. I don't even remember. You don't remember, but I do. He said, then added, my name is Zhuo Junhua. She raised her eyebrows. Okay, got it. Just as they were talking, the group in front of them suddenly stopped. Everyone looked at Han Yuanzi in confusion. Immortal Monarch, what's wrong? Second Master Chai asked while looking around vigilantly. Ah! There was a cry of alarm. At the same time, Han Yuanzi released his divine sense to check ahead. Fengjiu and Zhuo Junhua also released their divine sense to check their surroundings. Almost at the same time, the three of them retracted their divine sense. Run! This way! Han Yuanzi shouted and pointed to the left. Run! If you're too slow, you'll lose your life. Damn it! Let's go. Who told you to run around in here? Are you tired of living? As he scolded, he looked behind him. His gaze swept past everyone and landed on Fengjiu and Zhuo Junhua. He shouted at Zhuo Junhua, Junhua. Watch that bastard carefully. Don't let him die. With that, he quickly ordered everyone to escape. Martial Granduncle, what's going on? Fan Yishou asked anxiously as he followed him. At this moment, the Chai family disciple who had cried out earlier screamed again. Ah! Save me! When everyone turned back, they saw a dense swarm of red carnivorous ants crawling out from behind them. The Chai family disciple who had cried out for help was surrounded by the ants in the blink of an eye. His entire body was covered with blood-red ants, and in an instant, he was to be devoured to death, leaving his clothes to fall to the ground. Seeing this scene, everyone sucked in a breath of cold air, and their faces turned pale. Man-eating ants. At this moment, everyone finally understood why Master Hunyuan was scolding someone. It was because a disciple had poked into the man-eating ant's nest. Run! Chai Feng went forward to help her up. He looked back and saw Zhuo Junhua and Xiao Jiu at the back. He could not help but shout, Xiao Jiu, run! Run! Zhuo Junhua looked at the calm and fearless young man beside him and asked, aren't you afraid? Chapter 2024. With a wave of the youth's hand, a flame flew out. With a whoosh, the flame landed in front of the carnivorous ants. The carnivorous ants that were crawling forward couldn't dodge in time, and with a hiss, a large area was burned. A foul smell accompanied by the smell of burnt flesh spread out, and instantly filled the air. Zhuo Junhua saw the boy's footsteps move slightly and his entire body move several meters in an instant. Zhuo Junhua could not help but be slightly surprised. He glanced at the boy and waved his sword to attack the man-eating ants behind him. Two streaks of sword aura followed him forward and came to the boy's side. Screams and screams could be heard from the front. It turned out that other than the carnivorous ants behind them, the carnivorous ants on the left and right had surrounded them. Some of the slower ones were devoured by the carnivorous ants and turned into white bones in an instant. Some were bitten by the ants and screamed as they covered their wounds and ran. Run! Run! Han Yuanzi could not help but scold them when he saw them running in panic. Don't run to the left and right. Run forward. Forward. He burned a large number of carnivorous ants while protecting them. However, there were too many of them and they could not be burned to death. Moreover, they could not fight. The group of people ran forward madly. Behind them, wherever the man-eating ants passed, the trees were hollowed out, the weeds were pushed down, and the densely packed army of man-eating ants chased them from behind, not letting them go. There's a stream in front. Cross the stream. Quick! Second Master Chai shouted as he led the group across the stream that was a few meters wide. As the group fled across the stream, the carnivorous ants that were chasing them finally circled around the stream and left. Seeing this, the group heaved a sigh of relief and sat down while panting. That was close. Why were there carnivorous ants there? A member of the Chai family asked with a pale face. He could not help but shudder when he thought of the man who had turned into white bones in an instant. There were so many carnivorous ants that they could not fight even if they wanted to. There were too many of them and they were small targets. They could only run for their lives if they encountered them. Second Master Chai panted lightly. He glanced at his family members and ordered the people beside him, check how many of them died. How many were injured? Yes. The middle-aged man beside him responded and checked how many of the Chai family's disciples were missing and how many of them had been bitten. Second uncle, what happens if you're bitten by a man-eating ant? A young man asked in a trembling voice. He held his arm with one hand, and his face was still pale. Second Master Chai took a deep breath and looked at Hun Yuanzi with a slight frown. Immortal monarch, we have never encountered man-eating ants. May I ask what will happen if we are bitten by them? Nothing. Hun Yuanzi said as he looked around for Zhuo Junue and Fengjiu. However, he could not find them and could not help but frown. Second Master Chai's heart sank when he heard this. What would happen if nothing happened? When they came here, they had heard that the man-eating ants were one of the 5 poisonous creatures in the volcanic forest. However, they did not know what would happen to the people who were bitten. Fan Ishiu also held his arm. He walked up and asked with a serious expression, Martial Granduncle, disciple was also bitten. However, other than the pain, there doesn't seem to be anything else. I should be fine, right? Chapter 2025. The mere thought of this sent chills down his spine. Was the Fire Park stone more important than them in his master's eyes? Was he not afraid that they would not be able to return? He did not let his father know that he had come here. If he really died here, his parents would not be able to accept it. Among the 6 of them, only junior sister had mentioned the volcano forest to her father. The others did not know about it at all. Hunyuan, who was looking for Zhuo Junue and Fengjiu, frowned and glanced at him. His gaze landed on Hunyuan's arm, and he scolded, since you don't know anything, how dare you enter the volcano forest? Your master sent you to your deaths, and you really came. You are all brainless. Fan Ishiu and the rest of the Chai all lowered their heads and didn't dare to speak after being scolded by Hunyuan. They truly didn't think things through, especially the second master. He couldn't help but feel regret. If he knew this would happen, he wouldn't have brought them here to train. If all of them were to die here, he wouldn't be able to escape the blame even if he returned alive. In the end, he was overconfident. He thought that he could bring his family members into the volcano forest to train because he was an immortal expert. He did not expect to encounter danger again and again. At this moment, the Chai family's doctor shook his head after examining the injured members of the Chai family. He said to Second Master Chai, Second Master Chai, they look fine now. It's just some superficial wounds. I have already asked them to treat the wounds and apply some medicine. I just don't know that he just did not know if there would be any other symptoms later. Especially when he saw that Hunyuan didn't say much, he didn't have much confidence. However, he couldn't find anything at the moment. Immortal monarch, please tell us what will happen if we are bitten by the man-eating ants. We can prepare in advance. Second Master Chai had a bad feeling. If the bites were just superficial wounds, the Hunyuan immortal monarch would not look so bad. Uncle Master. Fan Ishiu also called out, looking at him uneasily. The surrounding people, whether they were bitten by the ants or not, all looked at Hun Yuanzi. Hunyuan snorted when he saw everyone looking at him. He said angrily, why are you looking at me? I don't know any medicine. Why do you think the man-eating ants are listed as one of the 5 volcanic poisons? Of course, it's because of their poison. But I did not find any traces of poison on their bodies. The doctor from the Chai family said doubtfully. He did not find any traces of poison. How could it be because of the ants' poison? Just because you did not find any traces doesn't mean there's no poison. Ordinary poison can be cured with antidotes. But this is the poison of the man-eating ant's poison. Hunyuan to Hunyuan. Chapter 2026. Many of them had been bitten by the carnivorous ants. If what he said was true, then wouldn't they be dead for sure? What can I do? I don't know any medicine. Hunyuanzi said angrily. His eyes were still looking around. He was puzzled. Where were the two boys? Marshal granduncle, can't we cure it even if we have the antidote? I just took the antidote. It's a level 4 pill. Should it work? Fan Ishio asked. His face was pale and his heart was heavy. For a chance of survival, he had even taken the level 4 antidote his father gave him. He just didn't know if it would work. It's useless, it's useless. The reason why these man-eating ants are one of the 5 poisons of the volcano forest is because the man-eating ants here are used to the high temperature of the volcano. They are not ordinary man-eating ants, but the tail of each man-eating ant has fire poison. I have never heard of anyone who has been bitten surviving. Then we can't be saved. One of them muttered. Hunyuanzi glanced at them and stroked his beard. He said slowly, it's not that there's no hope. After hearing his words, a glimmer of hope rose in the hearts of the people who were already in despair. Immortal monarch, please show us a way out. That little bastard. Let's see if that little bastard can save you. Hunyuanzi snorted. Looking at these people, they didn't know that there was such a skilled little bastard in their clan. And they were still trying to save him. They were holding a life-saving treasure in their arms but didn't know how to use it. These people had lived in vain. Little bastard? Everyone was puzzled. After thinking for a while, they asked carefully, is it Xiaojiu? Who else could it be? That little bastard's medical skills are brilliant. If he wants to save you, you will naturally be able to survive. He could also cure the poison from the carnivorous ants. They believed that the fire poison of the carnivorous ants would not be difficult for him. Everyone was shocked. At this time, they looked around and found that the young man in green was not here. Even the man surnamed Zhuo was not here. They couldn't help but tremble. They were focused on escaping and forgot about the young man. He couldn't have been bitten by the carnivorous ants, right? He's not here. Chai Feng also reacted. Could Xiaojiu be in danger? Why aren't you with us? I'll go back and look for it. I'll go with you. The rest of you can rest here. Second Master Chai then turned to the crowd and said, if they come back, ask him to take a look at your wounds. If we can't find him, we will come back as soon as possible. With that, he turned to Hunyuanzi and said, Immortal Monarch, please take care of the people here. We'll be back soon. Go. Thinking that the Chai family was that little bastard's clansman, Hunyuanzi didn't show any displeasure. He just waved his hand and found a place to sit down. Although he did not have much hope for the kid's skills, he believed that the kid would not die with Shuojunue, that blockhead, following him. He was probably just lost in the forest. Chapter 2027. Shuojunue watched as the young man rummaged through the area. The ants have just returned to their nest. You might draw them out if you keep rummaging around. I won't, Fengjiu replied without turning around. What are you looking for? Do you need my help? He asked as he followed behind the young man, keeping an eye on the surroundings. Purple wood grass. It should be around here. Help me look for it. Its leaves are green at the top and purple at the bottom. Its stem is purple and looks like a tree branch. See if you can find it. Fengjiu bent down to search through the bushes. Hearing his words, Shuojunue also pushed aside the grass to search around. After searching for a while, Shuojunue saw the purple wood grass that Fengjiu had mentioned earlier under a tree. He went forward and dug it out. See if this is it. Feng Jiu turned around and saw Zhuo Junue holding a purple wood herb a few meters away. She walked forward and smiled. Not bad, this is it. Let's check again. There should be more. One is not enough. Okay. The two of them searched the area. Suddenly, they heard someone calling out to them from the forest. Xiao Jiu. Xiao Jiu. Young Master Zhua. Young Master Zhua. Xiao Jiu. Young Master Zhua. The two of them who had already dug up a few purple wood grass straightened their backs and looked at each other. It looks like Chai Feng. Is it enough? If it's enough, let's go back. Zhuo Junue said. Feng Jiu looked at the purple wood grass in his hand and nodded. Yes, it's enough. Let's go. Those people probably couldn't wait any longer. Xiao Jiu. Xiao Jiu. Young Master Zhua. Where are you? Chai Feng shouted in the forest. They had followed the path they had taken earlier, but they couldn't find the two of them. Second uncle, could they have already? Chai Feng couldn't help but think of the worst. If they were surrounded by the ants, it would be difficult for them to escape. Let's keep looking. That young Master Zhua isn't an ordinary person. Even if Xiao Jiu isn't strong enough, young Master Zhua can still protect him, Second Elder Chai said as he continued walking forward. Feng Jiu, who was walking over, couldn't help but twitch her mouth when she heard their conversation. Was her strength not enough? Fine. Who asked her to suppress her strength to the early stage of Jindan stage? Indeed, she did look a little weak. It was no wonder that they felt that she couldn't do it. Ah. Xiao Jiu. Young Master Zhua. Chai Feng couldn't help but exclaim in surprise when he saw the two men walking over. Then, he quickly stepped forward. Young Master Zhua, Xiao Jiu, I'm so glad you're okay. Second Master Chai heaved a sigh of relief when he saw that the two were still alive. He hurriedly said to Feng Jiu, Xiao Jiu, many people have been bitten by the man-eating ants. The Hunyuan Immortal Monarch said that your medical skills can save everyone. Please save everyone. When Zhuo Junue heard this, he felt a little strange. However, he couldn't put his finger on it, so he just looked at the young man beside him. Feng Jiu smiled and said, let's go back first. Okay. Let's go back. The Immortal Monarch said that the heat poison of the man-eating ants is very powerful. I wonder how they are now. Second Master Chai said. He was also worried about his clansmen. Immediately, he led them back. Chapter 2028. Ah. Hiss. Ah. Everyone was wailing in pain, causing the people who were taking care of them to panic. The doctor from the Chai family was busy checking on their bodies, but he was also at a loss of what to do. Immortal Monarch, what should we do? The heat poison in their bodies has begun to act up. The doctor from the Chai family came to Hunyuan Zi's side and said anxiously. There's no use asking me. I've already said that I'm not a doctor. I don't know how to cure this thing. Hunyuan Zi was not in a good mood either. Seeing those people crying out in pain, and among them were disciples from the Nebula Immortal sect, how could he feel good? But it was useless to ask him. He really had no other choice. 3 female disciples from the Nebula Immortal sect surrounded Fan Isho, their faces full of worry. Eldest senior brother, how are you? Can you hold on? I'm fine. Fan Isho panted lightly as the heat poison in his body flared up. His entire body was scalding hot to the point where it was about to emit smoke. However, even though he was drenched in cold sweat and his face was flushed red, he had at least consumed a rank 4 detoxification pill earlier, which had somewhat alleviated the heat poison. Compared to the others who had already begun to vomit, his consciousness was still relatively clear. Eldest senior brother. The 3 girls looked at him with tears in their eyes, worried that he would die like this. Along the way, he had been taking care of them. If it was not for saving them, he would not have been bitten by the man-eating ants. The two men sitting next to him had dark expressions. Seeing their senior brother in such a state, they felt as if there was a fire burning in their hearts. One of them said in a deep voice, "When we return, I will definitely choose a new master. I don't want to stay at Jade Forest Mountain any longer. After leaving here, I will not return to Jade Forest Mountain. I will go home directly and have my father write a letter to the immortal sect." The man next to him said in a deep voice, "Entering here was the worst decision ever." Hearing their words, the three women wiped away their tears as well, and said, "We don't want to return to Jade Forest Mountain either. Master doesn't even care about our lives. If not for eldest senior martial brother protecting us throughout the journey, we would have long lost our lives." Fan Ishio moved his lips, wanting to say something, but when the words reached his mouth, he could not say anything. The danger of this trip was far beyond their expectations. If they still couldn't see their master's attitude towards them at this moment, then they would have lived in vain. Hunyuan, who was sitting in front of them, glanced at them when he heard their words. He unscrewed the wine pot at his waist and took a sip. He snorted and said, "You don't need such a master. If you follow him, you'll die a mysterious death sooner or later." He did not care about the actions of the Jade Forest Mountain Lord either. He allowed these few juniors to enter, and did not even send a person with a stronger strength to lead them. If they had not met him, they would have long died countless of times. "Oh no, someone's dead." The doctor from the Chai family cried out in alarm. He saw a member of the Chai family vomit. His body twitched for a while before he stopped moving. He went forward to check on him and found that he was no longer breathing. He was clearly dead. Hunyuan frowned and went forward to take a look. Then, he shook his head. "There's nothing I can do even if he dies. We're back." Chai Feng shouted from the other side of the stream. Raising his chi, he swept across the stream together with Fengjiu and the others, and landed on the grassland. Chapter 2029. As soon as he finished speaking, he saw a green figure walk past him and into the middle of the crowd. Second Master Chai and the others followed. Even Hunyuan Master tugged at his beard and went forward to take a look. Fengjiu walked forward and knelt down beside the dead man. He stretched out 2 fingers to feel the artery in the man's neck and bent down to listen to his heartbeat. Then, he pressed his hands on the man's chest and gave him first aid. After 10 minutes, he took out a silver needle to open up the man's blocked airway. The man vomited violently and regained his breath. Hiss. "He's awake?" "He's not awake, he's alive." Heavens! Xiaojio's medical skills are that good? He can even revive a person who's already dead? Instantly, everyone's shocked and excited eyes fell on Fengjiu, especially those who had been bitten by the man-eating ants. They surrounded him. "Xiaojio, Xiaojio, you have to save me. I was bitten by the man-eating ants. My body is burning and I feel like I'm dying." "Xiaojio. Xiaojio, me too. Me too." One by one, they squeezed forward. Fengjiu could not help but frown. He stepped back and said, "Don't push. Quiet down." Hearing his words, everyone quieted down. Hope reignited in their eyes. Hunyuan Master Chai was right. Xiaojio's medical skills were really good. The fire poison is not without an antidote. She looked at them and said, "I went to pick some herbs earlier. When I refine the herbs, you will have the antidote. The calmer your mind is, the slower the fire poison will flare up. You should sit quietly for a while." After she finished speaking, she said to the Chai family's doctor, "Uncle Chai, come and help me." "Okay, okay." The doctor hurriedly responded and followed her to the stream. Only then did Primordial Chaos sit down. He stroked his beard and said, "I told you. This little bastard must have a way." With that, he waved at Zhuo Junhua. "Come here." I have something to ask you. Zhuo Junue looked at the young man who was sitting by the stream and taking out many things from his space. His eyes flashed. Although Fengjiu had cured him last time, he had been in a coma. Today, he saw him save a dead man with his own eyes. It seemed that his medical skills were really good. He had reached the miraculous stage of bringing the dead back to life. Hearing the old man calling him, Zhuo Junue walked over to him and sat down beside him. What's the matter? He asked while keeping an eye on Feng Ix's movements. Han Yuanzi looked at him and asked, what did you do in the end? When Zhuo Junue heard this, he frowned slightly. What do you mean, what did they do after that? You know what I mean, Primordial Chaos said. Did you catch up at the back? You said you didn't know him. It seems that little bastard is picky. The more he spoke, the angrier he became. The person he wanted to take as his disciple did not care about him. Instead, he got along well with this blockhead. He really had no taste. Chapter 20:30. If he had not gone back to pick herbs, these people would not have been saved. Everyone waited anxiously. After about the time it took for an incense stick to burn, they saw them come back, shaking the water bags in their hands. Come, come, let's have some each. The Chai family's doctor poured out half a bottle of water with medicine and handed it to one of the Chai family's disciples who had been bitten by the man-eating ants. Everyone looked at the light purple water and could not help but be startled. One of them whispered, "Is this really the antidote? Will it work?" Fengjiu glanced at that person. If it doesn't work, you don't have to drink it. However, the others drank the medicine under the Chai family's doctor's instructions. They were not confident. After all, the antidote looked too easy to refine, right? Although they could not see how Xiao Jiao had done it, it seemed like he had only taken some herbs and added them into the water. Was that enough to make the antidote? Drink it. Fengjiu handed a small bottle to Fan Yixio. Thank you. Fan Yixio took it and drank it. They rested on the spot. After about half an hour, their symptoms gradually subsided. The fire poison in their bodies dissipated, leaving only some red and swollen wounds. It's gone. It's really gone. The burning sensation is gone. One of the Chai family's disciples said happily. He felt like he had survived a disaster. It's really gone. My body doesn't feel so uncomfortable anymore. Another person said happily and looked at Fengjiu. Xiao Jiao, thank you. Xiao Jiao, thank you. Xiao Jiao, thank you for saving us. A series of excited and joyful thanks came from the mouths of the crowd. Feng Nine smiled and said, "It's nothing." She saw that the Chai family's disciples were not bad, so she helped them. If they were evil people, she would not have saved them. You still need to apply medicine to your wounds. Come, let me take a look. The Chai family's doctor said as he came to the side of one of the disciples and applied medicine to his wounds. Little bastard, come here. Han Yuan sat by the stream and shouted at Fengjiu. Hearing the words little bastard, Fengjiu shook her head and stood up helplessly. She walked over. I'm not called little bastard. No one has ever dared to call me that. She looked at him with a smile, but there was an unknown meaning in her eyes. No one dared to call you that, but that old man called you that. Han Yuan snorted and looked at the youth sitting in front of him. He asked with dissatisfaction, last time, you helped Junue detoxify his poison and you cheated this old man of a treasure. This time, you saved so many people. Why don't you get some reward from them? How is that the same? Feng Jiao smiled and looked at him with narrowed eyes. There are some things that don't need to be calculative. I've always done things according to my heart. Just like when I helped Zhuo Junue detoxify, I did it on a whim. Moreover, I did mention it before I did it. I'll be rewarded. Didn't you say you didn't know the old man? What? Now you remember? The old man sat cross-legged and crossed his arms in front of his chest, snorting. You've been reminding me along the way. How could I not remember? She smiled and looked at him, but, so what if I remember? You can't take back what's in my hands. Moreover, I didn't cheat you to get it. It's my reward. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.